The quiet friend isn't shy. They're reading you at a level most people don't even realize exists. While everyone else is talking, they're noticing the micro expressions you thought no one saw, the tension in your voice you tried to hide, the shift in your energy when certain topics come up. They're not silent because they have nothing to say. They're silent because they're processing everything. Before we go deep into the psychology of why quiet people see things others miss, drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching this from. I love connecting with our community across the globe. And if you want to understand human behavior at a deeper level, hit that like button and subscribe, because we're about to break down the neuroscience of observation in ways that will change how you see the quiet people in your life. From a neurological standpoint, when someone talks less, their brain allocates more resources to sensory processing and pattern recognition. The prefrontal cortex isn't occupied with formulating responses or managing conversational flow. Instead, it's analyzing facial expressions, body language, tone shifts, and behavioral inconsistencies. This is cognitive bandwidth redistribution. Psychologically, quiet people often score higher in observational intelligence. They notice when you said you were fine but your shoulders tensed. They catch the half-second delay before you laughed at a joke. They see you check your phone anxiously when a specific person's name comes up. These aren't lucky guesses. They're data points collected over time. The quiet friend's silence creates a social dynamic that makes people reveal more than they intend. When there's conversational space, others rush to fill it. They over-explain, overshare, and provide information they wouldn't normally disclose. The quiet person doesn't need to ask probing questions. They just need to wait. People tell on themselves. According to psychology, introverted observers develop heightened sensitivity to social cues because their survival strategy in groups isn't verbal dominance, it's accurate assessment. They learned early that reading the room correctly keeps them safe and helps them navigate complex social environments without drawing unwanted attention. Here's the part most people miss. The quiet friend isn't just noticing surface behaviors. They're tracking patterns over weeks and months. They remember that 3 months ago you said you loved your job, but now you go quiet every Sunday evening. They notice you used to talk about your partner constantly, but haven't mentioned them in 2 weeks. They're building a psychological profile without you realizing it. Behaviorally, quiet people engage in what's called passive data collection. Every interaction, every group conversation, every reaction you have becomes input. Their brain naturally catalogs this information.
So when something changes in your behavior, it stands out immediately against the baseline they've established. You can't hide shifts from someone who's been quietly mapping your normal. From a neuroscience perspective, their mirror neuron system often functions at higher sensitivity. Mirror neurons fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing it. In quiet observers, this system picks up on emotional states and intentions with remarkable accuracy. They feel what you're feeling even when you're trying to mask it. The evolutionary advantage of this trait is significant. In ancestral environments, the people who survived weren't always the loudest. Often it was those who could read danger, detect deception, and assess trustworthiness accurately. Quiet observation is an ancient survival skill that manifests in modern social contexts. Psychologically, many quiet people are highly empathic. They don't just notice your behavior, they feel the emotional undercurrent driving it. When you're anxious, they sense the cortisol spike, even if you're smiling. When you're hurt, they detect the micro-expressions of pain you flash for milliseconds. This isn't psychic ability, it's nervous system attunement. Here's what's happening in real time. While you're in a group conversation talking about surface topics, the quiet friend is running multiple analytical processes simultaneously. They're noting who interrupts whom, whose opinions get dismissed, who seeks validation from whom, and where the power dynamics actually sit. Social hierarchies are transparent to them. From a behavioral science standpoint, quiet people often have superior memory for emotional events. They remember not just what you said, but how you said it, what you were wearing, who else was there, and what the energy felt like. These contextual details create rich associative networks in their memory. When patterns repeat, they recognize them instantly. The quiet friend also notices incongruence. When your words don't match your body language, they catch it immediately. You say you're excited about something, but your vocal tone is flat. You claim you're over a situation, but your jaw tightens when it's mentioned. These disconnects are neon signs to someone trained in observation. Neurologically, people who talk less often have increased activity in the temporal parietal junction, the brain region responsible for perspective taking and theory of mind.
They're constantly running simulations of what you might be thinking or feeling based on available evidence. This makes them exceptional at predicting behavior and understanding motivations. Psychologically, quiet observers often come from environments where reading people accurately was necessary for emotional or physical safety. Maybe they grew up in households where they needed to gauge a parent's mood instantly. Maybe they learned early that speaking at the wrong time had consequences.
Their observational skills are adaptive responses that became permanent traits. Here's the truth that makes people uncomfortable. The quiet friend knows your secrets before you tell them. They know you're struggling financially because you stopped suggesting expensive restaurants. They know your relationship is failing because you've stopped wearing your ring consistently. They know you're job hunting because your LinkedIn activity increased. They just don't say anything unless you bring it up. From a social psychology perspective, quiet people understand that knowledge is power, and revealed knowledge loses power. They keep what they observe to themselves because disclosing it changes the dynamic. Once you know they've seen through your facade, you'll either distance yourself or become defensive. Neither serves the relationship. The observation extends to group dynamics in ways that are almost unsettling. The quiet friend knows who in your friend group is genuinely supportive and who is competitive with you. They've watched interactions you weren't paying attention to. They've noticed the subtle undermining comments disguised as jokes. They see the whole chessboard, while others are focused on individual pieces. Behaviorally, quiet observers track consistency. They notice when someone's values and actions don't align. You claim honesty is important, but they've watched you lie to avoid conflict 3 times. You say you value loyalty, but they saw you gossip about a friend who wasn't present. They don't judge necessarily, but they file the information away. It informs their trust calibration. According to neuroscience, silence actually enhances sensory acuity. When you're not generating speech, your auditory processing sharpens. You catch tonal nuances others miss. You hear the slight tremor in someone's voice that indicates suppressed emotion. You detect the forced quality of a laugh that everyone else accepts as genuine. From a psychological development standpoint, many quiet people experienced invalidation early in life. When they tried to express observations or feelings, they were dismissed or told they were wrong about what they perceived. So they learned to trust their observations silently rather than voice them and face rejection. The skill deepened because it went underground. Here's what makes quiet observers particularly effective. They don't have confirmation bias in conversations because they're not trying to prove a point. They're genuinely curious about accuracy. They'll adjust their assessment if new data contradicts their initial read. This flexibility makes their eventual conclusions more reliable than those of people who decide quickly and defend their position. The quiet friend notices your triggers before you're fully aware of them. They see that you get defensive when people question your choices. They observe that you withdraw when you feel criticized. They recognize that you seek reassurance after taking risks.
These patterns are invisible to you, but clear to someone watching without the distortion of being inside your experience. Neurologically, quiet people often have enhanced activity in the default mode network when in social settings. This is the brain network active during rest and internal reflection. While others are in task-positive mode, focused on social performance, quiet observers are in a hybrid state that allows simultaneous external monitoring and internal processing. Psychologically, the quiet friend's silence often gets misinterpreted as disinterest or social anxiety. In reality, they're deeply engaged. They're just engaging through observation rather than participation. They're learning more about you in silence than most people learn through hours of conversation. Their database on you is comprehensive. From a behavioral standpoint, quiet observers develop exceptional BS detection. They've watched enough people lie, exaggerate, and perform to recognize the patterns. When someone is being inauthentic, they spot it within minutes. The micro-gestures, the rehearsed quality of stories, the strategic omissions, it's all visible to trained eyes. Here's the part that shifts everything. The quiet friend's observations aren't weaponized unless you betray their trust. They don't use what they know to manipulate or control. They use it to understand and navigate. But if you cross them, they already know your vulnerabilities because they've been cataloging them the entire time. You showed them exactly where you're undefended. The observation also extends to what you don't say, the topics you avoid, the people you never mention, the parts of your life that remain perpetually vague. To the quiet observer, omissions are as informative as confessions. The shape of what's missing tells them exactly what you're hiding.
From a neuroscience perspective, people who process information internally before speaking develop thicker neural pathways in regions associated with impulse control and delayed gratification. They're literally wired to observe and wait rather than react immediately. This gives them strategic advantages in social and professional contexts. Psychologically, quiet people often have rich internal worlds that make external validation less necessary. They're not seeking attention or approval through conversation. This independence means their observations aren't distorted by a need to be liked or accepted. They can see you clearly because they're not trying to impress you. The quiet friend knows when you're lying to yourself, not just to others. They hear the conviction in your voice when they claim something doesn't bother you, but they see the pattern of avoidance behaviors that proves otherwise. They watch you rationalize and justify and convince yourself of narratives that don't match observable reality. Behaviorally, quiet observers are exceptional at reading power dynamics and social hierarchies.
They notice who defers to whom, whose ideas get credited, who gets interrupted, and who holds invisible influence. In professional settings, this makes them politically astute. They navigate organizational structures by understanding the actual power map, not the official one. According to psychology, people who observe more than they speak often develop superior emotional regulation. They've practiced not reacting immediately to stimuli. They've learned to sit with discomfort rather than discharge it through speech. This gives them remarkable composure in situations where others become reactive or defensive. Here's what the quiet friend sees that you think is hidden. They know when you're pretending to be happy in your relationship. They notice the forced quality of your enthusiasm. They see you overcompensate with public displays of affection when things are actually rocky. They recognize performance when it's happening. From a neurological standpoint, silence allows for enhanced metacognition. The quiet person isn't just observing you, they're observing their own observation. They're noticing their reactions, questioning their assumptions, and refining their understanding in real time. This recursive processing creates depth of insight that surface-level interaction never achieves. Psychologically, the quiet friend often becomes the person people confess to eventually. Because they've been watching and understanding without judgment, you feel safe finally revealing what they already knew. Their lack of surprise when you admit your struggles isn't indifference, it's confirmation of what they'd already pieced together. The observation extends to your aspirations and fears. They notice what lights you up and what shuts you down. They see the dreams you mention casually but return to repeatedly. They recognize the fears you joke about because humor is your deflection mechanism. They're building a psychological map of your inner world based on external breadcrumbs. From a behavioral science perspective, quiet people are often highly selective about when they speak. When they do contribute, it's usually because they have something substantive to add that hasn't been said. This economy of speech makes their words carry more weight. People listen when the quiet one talks because it's rare and usually insightful. Neurologically, individuals who prefer observation over participation often have heightened activity in the anterior cingulate cortex, which is involved in error detection and conflict monitoring. They're constantly scanning for inconsistencies and discrepancies. This makes them exceptional at spotting lies, detecting problems early, and identifying risks others overlook. Psychologically, quiet observers understand that most communication is nonverbal. Studies show that up to 93% of communication is tone, body language, and context. While others focus on words, the quiet friend is reading the other 93%.
They're fluent in the language most people don't even know they're speaking. Here's the deeper truth. The quiet friend's silence is a gift, not a weakness. They're giving you space to be yourself without the pressure of constant interaction. They're offering acceptance without the need for performance. But their silence doesn't mean absence of judgment. They see everything and form conclusions based on patterns, not promises. From a social dynamics perspective, quiet people often become the emotional centers of groups without seeking that role. People gravitate to them for advice because they trust their judgment. They sense that the quiet friend has been paying attention in ways others haven't. Their insights feel earned rather than assumed. The observation also includes your growth or lack thereof. The quiet friend notices if you keep making the same mistakes with different people. They see if you're actually changing or just talking about changing. They track whether your actions align with your stated intentions over time. They're your invisible accountability partner. Neurologically, people who spend more time listening than speaking often develop enhanced auditory processing and memory. They remember conversations verbatim months later. They recall who said what, when, and in what context. This makes them reliable witnesses to your own history when you've forgotten or rewritten it. Psychologically, the quiet friend's observations are often motivated by care, not surveillance. They pay attention because they're invested in understanding you deeply. They want to know the real you beneath the social performance. But this also means they're hurt more deeply when you're inauthentic with them because they already knew the truth you were trying to hide. From a behavioral standpoint, quiet observers often become exceptional leaders when they choose to step into those roles. They've spent years understanding group dynamics, reading people, and identifying leverage points for influence. When they finally speak with authority, it's backed by a comprehensive understanding others lack. Here's what changes everything about how you see quiet people. Their silence isn't passive, it's active, strategic, and deeply engaged. They're conducting the most thorough analysis happening in any room, and when they choose to share what they've observed, it's usually because you're ready to hear it, or because the situation demands it. The quiet friend knows your potential better than you do in some ways. They've watched moments when you were authentic and powerful. They've seen glimpses of who you could be when you stop performing or hiding. They're holding a vision of you that you haven't fully stepped into yet, and they're waiting to see if you'll get there. From a final psychological perspective, if you have a quiet friend who's been in your life consistently, understand that they've chosen you deliberately.
They don't maintain relationships out of obligation or social convenience. They keep people around who are worth the energy of deep observation and genuine connection. Their presence in your life is a statement of your value. If this breakdown helped you see the quiet people in your life differently, share this video with someone who needs to understand this. And make sure you watch the video appearing on your screen right now, where we explore the psychology of people who remember everything you tell them and what that reveals about emotional investment. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.